The logistic industry trends are dependent on significant changes that are driven by the implementation of technology-driven innovations in the business processes. The next generation logistic management solutions are moving towards making the global supply chains more customer-centric and sustainable. Automation in logistic processes brings out a significant increase in productivity and efficiency in the workflow. The improvement of transparency and traceability of the supply chain is vital to maintain a flexible and dynamic relationship between various stakeholders. Hello everyone, I am Reggie John and this is Logistic Tech Dialogues presented by Kale Logistics Solutions. Logistic Tech Dialogues is our new weekly dialogue on innovations and technologies that make logistics move faster and deliver better. In this dialogue series, we get innovators and users of innovations to talk. Welcome to Logistic Tech Dialogues, brought to you in partnership with Kale Logistics Solutions, a trusted global logistic IT solutions provider for several Fortune 500 companies worldwide. We are so happy to start this new series of interviews with Stan Wraight as my guest in the inaugural episode. Stan Wraight is the President and CEO of Strategic Aviation Solutions International, or SASI World, which was established by him in 2005 with two other business partners. SASI is engaged in global consulting and management services for airlines, airports, international trade organizations, and financial institutions. Stan has over 40 years of senior air cargo management experience with major global cargo airlines that include KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, Atlas Air Worldwide Holdings, and Airbridge Cargo Airlines. Stan has a pulse on everything aviation and air cargo. He pulls no punches and minces no words. It is my pleasure to welcome Stan Wraight, President and CEO of SASI World, to the first episode of Logistic Tech Dialogues. Stan, great to have you and so happy to talk to you.
Thanks a lot. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are.
Stan, let's begin the conversation briefly talking about what SASI is all about and what your involvement with the industry currently.
Yeah, what SASI is all about. Well, I don't like the word consultancy. We see too much of consultants where you produce a report, it gets put in the right-hand drawer, and that's not what we do. We're very heavily involved in advisory services and strategic positioning, due diligences for financial institutions who are looking for acquisitions within the air logistics space. But mostly with the broad experience and the team we've built up over the years, advising airports, ground handling companies, airlines, and increasingly governments on best practices, how to make sure that your business can fit into what's coming. Not based on what happened in the past. The company is totally staffed with people who have actually done the jobs. We make sure that we're not hiring people that don't know what the subject matter is and have done it. Learn from their mistakes, because you don't learn without making mistakes, and then find the best practices to advise our clients, which are global actually.
Stan, we are still in the pandemic. Even though we have crossed like 18 months into the pandemic, we still find the tough situation, tough life around us. Just want your reflections about the pandemic and its impact on human society, aviation and air cargo. And what are some of the biggest lessons that all of us are learning from this pandemic?
Well, the first thing I think we've got to learn is from our mistakes again. As I said before, we didn't have a plan B. We were warned this would possibly happen. Quickly all the videos that were put up by Bill Gates, by Obama, saying that this was coming and we have to prepare, and we didn't, because we didn't listen. I hate to say that we got something that the world wasn't prepared for. Governments weren't prepared for. Aviation wasn't prepared for it. Certainly wasn't prepared for it. And the impact that it's continuing to have on society is huge. And what I'm afraid of with all the variants, and also some very, and the proliferation of the web leads to a lot of misinformation that unfortunately a lot of people believe. So the anti-vaxxers and the conspiracy theorists, it's just, there's not enough people that are jumping on board for vaccinations who can get it. And we're not sharing the vaccines with the people who want it, but can't get it because of their economic situation. So it's hopefully a real wake-up call for the world. We need local production of these vaccines globally. We have to take out of all of the equations, things like intellectual property concerns on the vaccines, because it's a right to live, really. And vaccines, if that's what's going to solve it, we should take this out of the profit category and put it into the basic needs of humanity category. As far as aviation is concerned, all I can say is I've never seen such a mess in my life, and I'll be truthful with you. The good thing about it is it absolutely totally exposed to everyone now the value of air logistics. And it's just the airlines, CEOs and boardrooms, especially the CFOs, if they just spent what they spend on first class lounges around the world on cargo, we could have been better equipped to handle this. And the other thing is that a lot of the airlines still don't get it. So the boardrooms of the world have to be better educated about air logistics, and the governments should start putting some pressure on the airlines as well of their strategic value, not just to economic development of industries to create jobs, but also sustainability of life when the need comes to bring in goods if you don't have them locally. So I hope that shock has smartened up some governments, and they're putting some pressure on and support to the airlines to be able to cope with the next crisis.
Stan, let's talk about technology, and this dialogue is about technology. How strongly do you feel that technology is playing a critical role in the global freight industry now, particularly after the pandemic or during the last 18 months?
Well, I think it's playing a valuable role, of course, but we're at 5% of what we could do. Technology, here I have to fault a little bit the press, and I'll do it by being kind as I can be, because I have a lot of people in the press I have a lot of respect for, like yourself, like other people. But technology and technological solutions is not about booking platforms in order to be an intermediary between a freight forwarder and an airline to get sales of cargo. It should be about what technology can do in order to lower costs, increase productivity, and leverage the efficiencies that we can have, because we are in our possession as, let's call it, the scheduled air cargo logistics business. And here I sort of go away from what the integrators have learned 30 years ago what to do. But with technology, the tools are there for us to do something that the industry needs. And we started in the voyage of technology about 8 years ago. And that was when I got extremely interested in e-commerce. And when I did, we actually started working with a beta shop we set up at Heathrow with some people, and studied it and learned. And the more we learned, the more we saw deficiencies. And then we tried to address them and realized it was an uphill battle. But the more we looked at it, the more we realized that it wasn't just about adding revenue to an airline's bottom line. We started seeing things like cost efficiencies, unique selling points that could leverage speed that were never there before, transparency. And we've come along that voyage as a company for the last 8 years. And we're now, I would say, technological knowledge in the company is very, very strong. We are not technicians. We are never going to tell you we know what to do as far as building a system. But what we do know is what you can do with a system and how it can leverage your unique selling points. I'd just like to make one simple example. If you take a 777 of Cathay Pacific or a 777 of British Airways and you fly it from Hong Kong to London Heathrow nonstop, it's the same airplane, and it could be any carrier. The 777. You might configure the belly a little bit different, but the operating economics of the airplane are pretty well the same. And I'm talking about a passenger flight, and it arrives in London in, let's say, 13, 14 hours. And if you give that same cargo to an e-commerce company, or if you give that cargo to an integrator, he's moving through multiple hubs. You can be 24, sometimes 48 hours faster in putting the cargo from one continent to the other. What's missing? What's the missing elements? It's what's on the ground and what you do with it when it arrives. And that's where we started seeing that, oh boy, there are some big dollars to be made here for the airlines. And there's some big savings here for the GHAs and the airlines if they just get and leverage that unique selling point. And I have to say, some of the airports in the US, especially now, they get it. They really get it. And they're making big steps to make sure that the facilities that they have on the airport become a marketing tool for the airlines, not just a real estate transaction with a developer. So I think we're at 5% of what's possible, to be honest with you.
Stan, you did make a mention about e-commerce. So my next question is actually about what do you think about the proliferation of e-commerce? And do you think that e-commerce is making a serious impact on how businesses are done today? And how is it changing logistic industry and facilitating global trade?
Well, let's just look at e-commerce and look at some of the numbers. I think the average consumer out there would think e-commerce is getting on Amazon or Alibaba or whatever, Lazada. And what are you looking for? An iPhone cover, or you're looking for something that you don't feel like driving all the way to a bricks and mortar retail store to buy, because you just click a button and you have it. And you usually have a lot of choice, more choice than you would ever have if you're going to the store, because they'll only carry certain brands. So in the B2C business to consumer business, yeah, it's very interesting. It's huge. It's about a $3 trillion business, retail sales worldwide. But what a lot of people don't understand is that the B2B, business to business e-commerce business, is more like closing in on $12 trillion in sales. Now, why is that important to us as airlines and airports and GHAs? It's because that e-commerce business, B2B, is what traditionally in the past was the relationship between the freight forwarder, the airline, and the ground handling company. It was in consolidations. It was moving in ways that the airline had no transparency and no involvement at all in the speed element, because the consolidation, his job was to move it from Hong Kong to London, as I said before. But what happened prior to that and what happened after to that, he had no involvement in. He didn't know, he didn't care. And now with e-commerce, if we don't get our act together as logistics industry in the scheduled business, shall we say, be it a passenger airline or an all-cargo airline, we're going to miss the boat, like we missed it a couple of times in the past when we had opportunities to improve what we offer to the public. The last thing I'll say on e-commerce is with a $12 trillion business, UPS just announced their results last week, and it's an indicator of what I said. 28% increase in their B2B business and a 16% drop in their B2C business. Now, what does that mean for us? If you look at the aviation business and where the airplanes are placed, there's roughly 1,300 medium and wide body freighters flying around the world, roughly. We know for sure that about 650 to 700 of them are operating for the people you would expect to do that. And that's UPS, that's FedEx, that's DHL, Express, and others. But in the other 650 are also carriers like Amazon, like Polar Air Cargo, which is a DHL investment, et cetera, et cetera. So if you truly look at it, there's very few freighters out there available in the future for companies who want to handle e-commerce and not be tied into Amazon or Alibaba. They want an independent solution. And that's another unique selling point that the airlines could get together if they can organize on the ground. They can offer those products and be faster than Alibaba and Amazon truly if they leverage that speed of that passenger airline belly. So I'm very optimistic about B2B. I'm pessimistic to any airline that doesn't understand that and depends on volume to get their revenue, because the bigger are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the small and medium-sized freight forwarder, for example, is struggling to be able to compete against that. So you better find products that can support them in this e-commerce world, so that you'll still have a more than 5 or 6 customers to choose from in working with your freight. Either that, or you better cut costs dramatically in your cargo division.
Digital transformation of the air freight industry is something that we've been hearing for quite some number of years. What's your realistic evaluation of the digital transformation of the global air freight industry? Is it really transformative? And is the air freight industry taking full advantage of the digital potential with the available modern technology tools that we have today?
Yes and no. Yes, it's transformative. One of the things that we formulate our opinions on, and why I call ourselves advisors and not consultants. We've spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours talking to everyone in the logistics chain. We just completed recently a mandate from an airport. We spent 47 hours, I believe, interviewing stakeholders throughout the air supply chain. And all it did was expose deficiencies for better use, where technology could be an enabler to solve those problems. I mean, other issues, of course, were involved in those stakeholder interviews. But just that one airport, we spent 47 hours, I think it was, in interviews. And we weren't charging by the hours before anybody says that. It was a project price, but we just do that. Because we want to give the best advice we can to anybody. And what have we learned? Airport technology, for example, cargo community systems, are the way forward. They are. Why? Because it provides a variable cost solution, and it provides it to everybody. For example, I talked before about the SME, small and medium-sized freight forwarders. They need a solution. They can't afford to invest in the IT systems that a FedEx or a UPS have. They just can't. And they've got to get something where the airport can support them. That's number one. The second thing is information flow. We spoke to one of the largest shippers in the world because we were representing an airline in the US, and we wanted to know why they did what they did. And with the Economic Development Board of that state, we talked to this large manufacturer about what is it? What is your decision process in order to choose an airline and what an airport and also a ground handling company? Tell us what it is. And they were very, very, very clear in the answer. It's number one, speed. We want 48 hours, our plant to our plant over there. That's the first thing. And you better deliver that. The second thing, which was very surprising, they said transparency before quality. Quality was number 3. Transparency throughout. If something falls on the aircraft, on the ramp, and is damaged, we want to know what the damage is. We want photos of it. We want it sent to the importing side, and we want it sent to the exporting side. If the airplane's delayed for 2 hours, we want to know it's delayed for 2 hours. But we want everyone on the importing side to know as well, so they can be prepared. If there's anything to do with the shipment at all, we want it transparent throughout and every stage of the process. And this is not 500 kilos of spare parts. This is plane loads of spare parts and production material going regularly every week in 747 freighters. This is not small change. So number 1, okay, speed. Number 2, transparency. Number 3, quality. We want to know if there's a damage. We don't want claims, but if there is damage, we want to know what it is so we can fix it. Back to transparency. And then after those 3 criteria are met, then the freight forwarder or the airline can bid on our business. And that's the only time we talk about price, after with the first 3 elements are made. That's number 1. Number 2, when we look at what happened with pharmaceuticals, everyone says the airlines failed. Blame it on the airlines, blame it on the airports. Again, false, completely false. Why did that happen? Why did we lose so much to sea freight? Why? Because we weren't prepared. And why weren't we prepared? Because there was no transparency in knowing what the pharmaceutical companies wanted. And I'm not talking about backselling against the freight forwarder. I'm talking about the freight forwarder and the airline should be talking continuously for information purposes, not for backselling, just to know what's happening. And if the airlines had been aware, they could have notified the airports, they could have modified their processes and whatever. So that's the second thing. The failures that we hit in the mega side are completely negated if we have transparency of information through technology. And then the last thing, when you talk about technology, we see all these companies now talking about how you should join our association, and we'll tell you how to handle your pharmaceuticals and all the rest of it. When the world already had the standards that we needed in global distribution practice of GDP. And we'll tell you what to do and build these cold rooms and everything else. And then when you start looking at it, when we did the strategic initiative for various airports in the US on how to handle the vaccines coming in to comply with what the governments wanted, we said, look, you want it to land and you want it in the truck and on its way in 45 minutes to an hour and a half. It's not going to dwell in the warehouse if you do it properly. So technology allows that. You don't need to dwell cargo in warehouse. And if you don't dwell cargo in warehouses, the expenses of the warehouses go down as well. The efficiency goes up and costs can be reduced so that we are a player in the cost role as well. So technology today, we're at, again, I go back to 5% of where we can be. But, and I'm very happy to say this, especially the airports, they get it. And the GHAs, I should say, are slowly but surely catching on as well. That if they know what's coming on a truck, for example, they can make sure that they have the right staff with the right equipment ready to pick it up. And if they know what's coming exactly in on an airplane, and the customs and everyone else is linked through technology, and they accept these processes, it means you don't dwell cargo on an airport, you pass it straight through. And one last statement on technology. The United Nations, which we are working with through Canada, and one of my associates in the States is on the US delegation, with trade facilitation initiatives, it's all about digitization of logistics for trade facilitation. And there are various committees going on, which we are privileged to be able to be a part of, where the directives through UN Resolution 33 on the single window, as one example, are dictating what our future is. And everybody in the supply chain should be paying big attention to that. Because if they want their airport or their airline or their ground handling company or their freight forwarding company to survive, pay attention to this, because the digitization is going to come.
Speed, transparency, and quality, those are three important takeaways from what you said, the answer to my last question. And you also mentioned about the trade facilitation and how we create single windows of global trade. One of the things that we also have noticed that some of the air cargo industry stakeholders managed to create this digital trade corridor, digital trade lanes to make sure that important commodities are actually easily and with all transparency is moved across on those trade lanes. Stan, what would be some of the reasons why those airport community initiative programs are not becoming really popular within the air freight industry?
Well, first of all, I beg to differ. I mean, it's just in its infancy, okay? We were privileged, again, between Atlanta and Schiphol to participate in the first discussions on trade, having city officials, government officials, universities, and the cargo communities in both airports between Schiphol, Amsterdam, and Atlanta. And we learned a lot from that. We definitely did. And when we focused on it, we saw that the benefits that could be that obviously if you put something into the system in Amsterdam and it comes out in Atlanta and it's handled with speed, quality, and transparency, yeah, you've got a viable solution for it, be it Delta, KLM, or any other carrier that flew those two routes. And it opened our eyes to the possibilities of this. The unfortunate thing is COVID hit. It hit right at the wrong time. And we've seen in a massive turnover of staff. I mean, I won't name airports, but I mean, I can think of 3 major airports in Europe where staff were let go, and staff were the only ones who really were interested in cargo or taking care of cargo. And that process of thinking that you can reduce staff and solve problems by eliminating somebody. I mean, I was shocked when Glenn Hughes left IATA. Not that Glenn left, that was his personal choice, but that I had to even let him go in the middle of a crisis. So the data and logistics corridors have to be something that the airports are now thinking of more and more, and they are. Trust me. We've spoken to major airlines in the Gulf, for example, 2 or 3 of them, and we've also spoken, obviously, the European carriers, and what they're telling us is that that the systems and the products that they want to put in place at the request of mostly small and medium forwarders or whatever, it doesn't work at the moment. And biggest problem that they're facing, and they very, very, very well know what they want. And when you see I mean, they're telling us that when you weigh something that's out of gauge and put on a, say, 20-foot pallet, they want that machine to talk to their system and go back to headquarters so they can verify that the load and trim balance on the airplane is correct. When you start talking about that type of request for safety, security of the airplane, but also that type of request when it comes to the demands of the government now for safety with e-commerce, because there's so many shippers. ICAO launched the Safe Supply Chain course, which they asked us to build, and we launched with TIACA. Because everyone's concerned about it. And only through technology can we have transparency of what's inside those shipments. And now they're not asking for it anymore, they're demanding. So if you're not able to provide that in the data logistics corridors between, let's say, Hong Kong and Chicago, how can you not have bottlenecks everywhere? And how can you not have a substandard product? And how can you not expect that you lose the value side of the business equation to the integrators, the mega large freight forwarders that are developing, and the e-commerce companies? You'll lose it all if you don't embrace technology.
What are the current technology trends that you closely watch, and how does air freight industry make use of them? Is it artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, data analytics, blockchain, Internet of Things?
Well, Internet of Things and blockchain and all that is integrated a lot into what we're doing today. I mean, my refrigerator talks to the internet, but the Internet of Things, I saw a wonderful example when we were designing a warehouse where the whole mechanized handling system, the MHS system, talks through the Internet of Things, and they only have a control room in Germany. And if anything goes wrong, if a piece of plastic knocks a laser beam out of place, through the Internet of Things, they know it, they go back and they tell the maintenance people, only 1 or 2 instead of 12, that go up and fix that. So I mean, we've seen it in our side. We've seen AGVs, automated ground vehicles, in the design on master planning that we're doing now. When they park freighters way out, we're great believers in AGVs moving the cargo and on a track, rather than having tug and dollies all the time, which are limited on how you can handle the pallets and also how many you can carry, et cetera, et cetera. We're into all artificial intelligence. One of our clients, through just one process, saved $20 million a year in the all cargo business. So we believe in that as well, and we support it as well. The things that impress me most, that give the most bang for the buck, shall we say, meaning in reducing cost and improving efficiency and transparency as well, are things like cargo community systems, which I mentioned. I think that's the first step, and that's a great step. Automation and warehousing. The systems in the warehouses can talk to a smart gate technology, for example, in allowing a truck into the airport to go to a certain door, and can actually physically position the cargo at that door so that the interface, the human interface, is the truck driver to 1 or 2 people or 3 people. We're not trying to eliminate jobs here, but there is a huge problem with staff in the airport side and the ground handling side. What we're talking about is when the plant charges the truck from the exporter, and it's all inputted digitally, and they're talking to the cargo community system, which is talking to the GHA, and they prompt position number 5 in the material handling system to bring the pallets to door number 20, and they notify the trucker, when you come to door number 20 to pick up or deliver cargo, we're ready for you. So you come at 2 o'clock and you'll be gone at 2:45. Whereas before, if you came at 2 o'clock, you might be lucky to leave at 4:30. So you can just see it in everything we do, and in what the suppliers of these automated sort and retrieval systems, which are needed for for small packages, and the material handling systems are doing. Just last week, Lodeca in Germany announced and showed some trials on what they're doing with automated ground vehicles to bring pallets to the back of the systems in the warehouse. Can go up to 200 meters away from the warehouse. KLM built a system in Schiphol for handling small packages, state of the art. Simple people, they actually take a baggage cart in, tip it, and then bags are all sorted and brought to the right place to go to the next flight. These are tremendous, tremendous things, and I think they have to be replicated everywhere in the airport. And the other thing, transit airports, airports that depend on transit, they better start handling cargo in their hubs with the speed of passenger baggage if they want to participate in the products that are going to pay in the future. And there I mean e-commerce. If they can handle a passenger baggage in 55 minutes to an hour and a half, why can't they handle small packages with the same speed? They have to get their act together and invest, because or else these major transit hubs are not going to survive in the future. The other thing I appreciate too is now the airports are understanding that the facilities are not just a real estate transaction. They're a vital source of capability in that region for economic development, outside in. They're a vital source of ways of helping in lowering your environmental footprint. And they're also an economic stimulator for the airlines that are flying to your airport, meaning they can, if they come to your airport and you participate in these data and logistics corridors with other airports of consequence, then what do you get? You get the airlines more profitable, and they're able to keep and put back into service wide body airplanes that might be parked instead. I don't have to tell you, you just have to read the news. What's happening now with the A321neo and A321LR and whatnot, the 737 MAX, the new one, the 10,000, that's going to overtake the North Atlantic. Why would you, if you only have 150 to 200 passengers or whatever, with an excellent, if you look at the business class product offered by JetBlue on their A321s on the North Atlantic, it's as good as any major wide body carrier. And it's fit for purpose. And if passage doesn't return the way it does, I mean, profitable traffic, not $750 to China return, why would you put a wide body airplane on that route unless the cargo contribution from the bellies justifies it? And we can make that justification if we can get technology into everything we do for reducing costs, reducing our environmental footprint, and allowing us to meet that criteria of speed, transparency, and quality. Technology is the key to all of it.
That brings me to the last question, and I don't know how closely you observe and watch the logistic tech industry with several startups creating smart solutions. How closely do you watch them, and are there any fascinating companies that you watch out for? It's also that these are the companies that are also getting heavily funded by venture capital funds and private equity funds. What are some of your thoughts about the logistic tech startup ecosystem?
I think you started this off by saying I'm not afraid to say what I think, right?
Yes.
So, but anyway, look, most of what I've seen so far, I wouldn't spend a dime on or invest a dime in. And the reason for that is very simple. It's going to be, if the airlines, the airports, and the ground handling companies get their act together, you don't need a tech service provider to put something in front of you to make a booking on an airline. If the airline participates in a variable cost solution, which the airports and the GHA should offer. That's number one. I think most of the money is going to the very good salesmen in these tech companies, and not the real practical tacticians, shall we say, that are in a few companies. And there are some that are doing a very good job of it. I mean, you know, your sponsor, Calais Logistics, I keep pronouncing it wrong. Dali, and over in Brussels, but they have a local solution over there, which is very, very good. And another interesting example is Cargonaut, where the government and the airport have realized how valuable it is for the economic well-being of the Netherlands that they've taken it over completely and they're rebuilding it completely to be compliant. The other thing is that these systems have to talk to multimodal, and I don't think any of the systems I've seen so far, which are more geared to commercialization rather than the efficiency. Commercialization of your processes If you're an airline, if that's what it's all about, sorry, I don't think that's where you should be putting your money if you're a venture capitalist or a private equity company. But if you put your money into these companies that are going to improve the processes and become so valuable because of the reasons I mentioned before, which is environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, complying with government rules that are coming. It's not a thought process, it's happening. That's where the money is in the future. And I think once the airlines understand that all these platforms, they might sound nice now, but if you're marketing capacity from, let's say, the Caribbean islands back to Europe, where the only export might be sand, yeah, okay, you don't want to invest anything, but I think there's probably a local GSA you could give the business to, and he can handle it much better because he knows the local environment. I believe a lot in face-to-face communication still, because interpersonal skills are what it's about. It's not just about selling something. It's about market knowledge and trends and being able to adapt. And even artificial intelligence can't give you that information. If Mercedes is going to stop flying to or supporting a plant in Africa, no booking platform is going to solve that problem for you. You better know about it in advance if you're counting on it from on your airline from Germany to China or Africa or whatever. So I'm not too keen on all these platforms. I think there's too many of them, and I don't think they serve the purpose they should be, or the money should be invested more into the companies that are going about fixing the problems I described. 48 hours door to door, transparency throughout, and absolute quality through the whole system. If that's what the business case is for the technology company, that's where I put my money.
Thanks, Stan, for being part of this dialogue, and I like to wish you all the very best.
Well, I wish all of your viewers a safe and healthy 2021. COVID-19 has been terrible, and we've learned to live with it in some ways, but I'm afraid we're going to have to live with it for a little while to go. So everybody out there, be safe and wear your mask.
That was Stan Wraight, President and CEO of SASI World. I hope you enjoyed watching this interview. Give us a like and share it among your social and professional networks. Also, if you're not a subscriber of our YouTube channel, please do subscribe now and click the bell icon so that you do not miss any of our new videos. Join me next Thursday as I bring a new guest for the next episode of Logistic Tech Dialogues presented by Kale Logistics Solutions. Until next Thursday, take good care of yourself and be safe. Thanks for watching.